In a quiet village nestled deep within the forest, there lived a humble hunter named Obi and his loving wife Ada. They led a simple life, content with their modest means, finding richness in their deep love for each other despite their poverty. One fateful evening, while hunting in the heart of the forest, Obi stumbled upon an unexpected sight. A woman, barely alive, lying on the ground. Her clothes were tattered, and her body was marred with dirt and scratches. Without hesitation, he rushed to her aid, carrying her back to his home. Upon Obi's return, Ada welcomed him with a warm smile, but her expression shifted to concern as she saw the stranger. The woman introduced herself as Bissy, exuding an unsettling air. Despite her unease, Ada agreed to help, believing they could not turn away someone in dire need. As days turned into weeks, Bissy's health improved, but Ada's discomfort deepened. There was something off about Bissy, an unnatural quality that made Ada uneasy. She often caught Bissy watching her with cold, calculating eyes, but Obi, blinded by kindness, dismissed Ada's concerns. One night, Ada was awakened by strange noises. Heart pounding, she rose and crept toward the window. In the moonlight, she saw Bissy walking outside, her movements eerily smooth and serpentine. Fear gripped Ada's heart, and before she could wake Obi, Bissy vanished into the darkness. The following day, Obi ventured into the forest, and Ada, still shaken from the night before, decided to keep a close watch on Bissy. While tending to her garden, she felt a chill run down her spine. Turning, she saw Bissy standing at the doorway, her eyes glinting with malice. Suddenly, Bissy's body twisted and contorted, her limbs elongating, skin turning scaly. In a horrifying transformation, she became a massive snake. With terrifying speed, the creature lunged at Ada, coiling around her. Ada struggled to break free, but the snake's grip was too strong. Her screams were silenced as her life was crushed out of her. When Obi returned home, he found Ada lifeless in the garden, his heart shattering into pieces. Overwhelmed with grief, he cradled her cold body in his arms and took her to the village healer, hoping for a miracle. The healer confirmed his worst fears. Ada had been killed by a venomous snake, but the bite carried an unusual essence, hinting at something darker. Devastated, Obi returned home to find Bissy, who feigned sympathy for his loss. Her words dripped with false sorrow, claiming she had heard of Ada's death from the villagers. But Obi sensed something was off, and for the first time he felt a flicker of suspicion towards Bissy. As days turned into weeks, Obi attempted to move on, but the weight of Ada's death pressed heavily on his heart. Strangely, Bissy remained by his side, offering comfort. Initially, he resisted her advances, but over time his grief clouded his judgment, and Bissy's presence became a twisted source of solace. The villagers noticed changes in Obi. Once a man of the people, he grew distant, withdrawing into himself. His hunts became more fruitful, and wealth began to accumulate, but it came at a terrible cost. The once kind-hearted hunter was turning cold and mistrustful, isolating himself from those around him. Bissy, now his closest companion, whispered poison into his ear, convincing him that the villagers were envious of his newfound success and sought to take advantage of him. Slowly, Obi severed ties with friends, trusting no one but Bissy. As Obi's wealth grew, so did his paranoia. Bissy's influence deepened, transforming him into a shadow of his former self. The villagers who had once warned him about Bissy began to steer clear, fearing the curse that seemed to shroud his home. Ultimately, Obi realized too late that the woman he had welcomed into his life, the one who had wormed her way into his heart, was responsible for Ada's death. By that time, it was too late. Bissy, the serpent in disguise, had taken everything from him, his wife, his trust, and his very soul. Obi's success as a hunter had elevated him to the richest man in the village. His traps were perpetually full, and people flocked to buy his fresh meat at the market. Yet, deep down, he felt something was amiss. His success came too easily, and he ignored the villagers' whispers, his fortune seeming to defy logic. Unbeknownst to Obi, Bissy was secretly filling his traps, ensuring his hunting always yielded bountiful results. As his wealth grew, the villagers' suspicions mounted, especially a man named Madhu, who accused Bissy of being a snake in disguise. Many dismissed his claims, until Madhu was bitten and killed by a snake. Fear spread through the villagers that Bissy had brought bad luck to their once peaceful home. They sought justice from the king, but when Bissy appeared at the palace, her beauty and charm captivated him. Instead of investigating the villagers' claims, the king dismissed their concerns outright. At home, Obi confronted Bissy about the swirling rumors. She denied everything, and still blinded by love, he chose to believe her. However, when news surfaced of Bissy secretly visiting the king, doubt resurfaced in his heart. His luck in hunting mysteriously vanished, further fueling his suspicions about Bissy's true nature. The queen, determined and tense, approached Obi's modest house. Her presence was imposing, a stark contrast to his humble abode. The tension in the air was palpable as she entered, startling Obi, who braced himself for the impending confrontation. As Obi looked up, startled by the queen's entrance, Bissy lingered in the shadows, a sly smile creeping across her lips. Unbeknownst to them, a dark confrontation was looming, the weight of betrayal thickening the air as the queen left behind an unspoken threat. Days passed, and the camera cuts to the queen in her chambers, lying on her bed. Suddenly, her eyes widen as she clutches her chest, struggling to breathe. Servants rush in, alarm spreading across their faces as they watch her collapse to the floor. The camera lingers on the queen's hand as it falls limp, signaling her untimely death. News of the queen's death spreads throughout the village. The camera follows groups of villagers gathered in clusters, their faces lined with disbelief. Whispers circulate about the suddenness of the tragedy and what it might mean for the king. The king stands on a palace balcony, addressing his subjects. His announcement shocks everyone. He is marrying Bissy. The camera captures the stunned reactions of the crowd, with close-ups of wide-eyed villagers exchanging bewildered glances. Inside his home, Obi paces, clearly distressed. His fists clench in frustration, and he slams his hand on the table, disbelief etched on his face as he reflects on Bissy's actions. The camera cuts to Bissy standing by the window, gazing out at the moonlit night, unfazed by Obi's turmoil. The lighting emphasizes the emotional divide between them. Obi in shadow, conflicted and powerless, while Bissy stands bathed in cold, calculated light. The tension in the room is thick. The camera shows a group of worried villagers gathering at a humble shrine. Their faces are lined with concern as they express their fears to the village priest, who listens intently. His expression shifts from calm to grave, realizing the depth of the situation. The priest performs a ritual, mixing herbs and lighting candles as he chants softly, his actions deliberate and imbued with ancient wisdom. The scene is mystical, with smoke curling into the air as the villagers watch in reverence, their hope resting on the priest's guidance. Cut to the king's chambers. The camera focuses on the king lying in bed, appearing weak and pale. His breathing is labored, and his face is contorted in pain. He begins coughing violently, clutching his chest as he struggles to sit up. The camera zooms in on his face, capturing his realization that something is terribly wrong. Behind him, Bissy stands at the doorway, watching with eerie calm. The scene is chilling as Bissy's face is illuminated by moonlight, her expression cold and devoid of emotion. She doesn't intervene, merely observing as the king weakens further. Obi, filled with conflict, sneaks out of his house under the cover of darkness. His footsteps are silent but determined as he approaches the palace. The camera follows him as he slips past guards, his face a mask of grim resolve. In his hand, he grips a knife tightly, knuckles white with tension. Meanwhile, the priest continues his rituals. The camera shows close-ups of the priest's furrowed brow, beads of sweat forming as he works to uncover the dark forces at play. His chanting grows louder and more urgent as the night deepens. Obi enters the king's chambers. The camera captures his slow approach, the knife gleaming in the faint candlelight. He stands over the king, who is barely conscious, his breathing shallow. The tension builds as Obi hesitates, his face showing inner turmoil. Suddenly, Bissy steps out from the shadows, her eyes locking onto Obi. The camera cuts to her, standing in silence, watching Obi's every move. The final shot lingers on Obi's hand as it trembles, unsure of whether to strike.